A princess crossing the North Sea under royal protection, while the ocean itself trying to kill her. Massive warships were dragged into dreadful storms. Sailors swore that the waves moved like something alive, something hunting them beneath the water, like a pure black magic horror. And back in Copenhagen, authorities became convinced this wasn't nature at all. It was witchcraft. The investigation led them to a hidden gathering in a weaver's house, where women were accused of trapping little devils inside empty beer barrels and sending them floating through the harbor at night. And at the center of all of this, there lies a woman known as the Devil's Mother, who made those things crawled out of the wood, attached themselves to the royal fleet, and dragged the ships into the freezing Black Sea. In this witchcraft documentary video, you'll get to know a woman accused of all this, Anna Koldings, whose trial went beyond Salem witch trials. Didn't beg for the mercy, but did something that terrified the entire Denmark. And what started as a storm at sea would soon spiral into one of the most highlighted witch trials in European history. The North Sea in the autumn of 1589 was not merely a body of water. It was a churning, grey graveyard. The spray was like needles of ice, and the wind howled with a frequency that sounded less like a gale and more like a coordinated scream. Somewhere in that chaos, Princess Anne of Denmark, the 14-year-old bride-to-be of King James VI of Scotland, was trapped. Her fleet, the pride of the Danish crown, was being toyed with by waves that defied the laws of physics. Ships were tossed like corks. Massive wooden hulls groaned as if something beneath the surface was pulling them down by the keel. This wasn't a seasonal storm. It was an assassination attempt by the elements themselves. Back in the safe, stone-walled halls of Copenhagen, the atmosphere was even more suffocating than the tempests at sea. The Danish admiral, Peter Munk, was a man facing a slow-motion execution. He had promised a safe passage for the royal bride, and he had failed. But Munk was not a man to accept blame. He knew that the ships were in good repair. He knew his sailors were the best in the world. If the North Sea was trying to swallow the princess, it wasn't because of the wind. It was because of a curse. The search for a scapegoat led the authorities into the dark, damp alleys of the city, away from the starched collars of the court and into the world of the wise women. They were looking for a face to attach to the storm. They found it in the Blue Tower, Copenhagen's most feared prison, in the form of a woman who would soon be known to all of Europe as the Devil's Mother, Anna Koldings. To understand the terror that Anna Koldings inspired, one must go back to a cramped, dimly lit room in the home of Karen the Weaver. This house, tucked away in a corner of Copenhagen where the sun rarely reached the cobblestones, was the site of the most sensational occult gathering in Danish history. It was here, amidst the smell of damp wool, tallow candles, and something metallic and sharp, that the fate of the Scottish and Danish crowns was allegedly decided. Anna Koldings did not look like a revolutionary. She was a woman of the common people, someone who understood the properties of herbs and the weight of a well-placed word. But when she entered Karen's house that night, she wasn't seeking to heal a fever or find a lost trinket. According to the harrowing confessions that would later emerge, she and a coven of women had gathered for a purpose that bordered on the cosmic. They were there to summon a storm that would change the course of history. The ritual was not a thing of cinematic elegance. It was a visceral, gritty display of folk magic turned toward malice. At the center of the room sat several empty beer barrels. In the 16th century, the barrel was a symbol of sustenance, of the harvest. But in the hands of the coven at the weaver's house, they became vessels for the demonic. Anna Koldings stood over them, her voice low and rhythmic, chanting words that seemed to vibrate the very glass in the windows. The sensational center of the accusation was the little devils. Anna confessed, under the crushing weight of the Inquisitor's tools, that the coven had summoned small, spectral entities and hidden them inside these beer barrels. These were not the red-skinned demons of church paintings. They were described as oily, shadowy things, parasitic and cold. As the ritual reached its peak, the women sent these barrels out into the harbor. The imagery is terrifying. Dozens of barrels bobbing silently in the black water of the Copenhagen docks, each carrying a hitchhiking demon waiting for the royal fleet to set sail. When the ships finally left the harbor, the devils allegedly crawled out of the wood and attached themselves to the keels. They didn't just cause wind. They acted as spiritual anchors, dragging the ships into the troughs of the waves, ensuring that no matter how hard the sailors fought, the North Sea would remain a churning cauldron. This was the dramatic event that shattered the Danish public's sense of safety. The idea that a group of peasant women in a weaver's house could command the very ocean was more frightening than any foreign army. Anna Koldings was not merely a witch to the people. She was a political necessity. The Danish Minister of Finance, Christopher Valkendorf, was under fire for the state of the Navy. If the storm was an act of God or bad maintenance, Valkendorf's head was on the chopping block. But if the storm was witchcraft, then he was a victim, not a failure. Anna was moved to the Blue Tower, a place where the walls were thick enough to muffle the screams of those undergoing the extraordinary interrogation. In the Blue Tower, Anna Koldings became a dark celebrity. She was not a broken woman in the early days of her imprisonment. She was defiant. She played into the role of the devil's mother, perhaps realizing that the more sensational her claims, the more power she held over her captors. She spoke of her familiar spirits, of the way the air felt when she called the wind, and of the secret meetings she held with women of much higher status than herself. The good she had once brought to her community, her knowledge of midwifery and herbalism, was stripped away and recontextualized as a sinister recruitment tool. She was accused of using her cures to bind women to the devil. Her popularity among the poor, who once sought her for help, turned into a feverish hatred. The people of Copenhagen gathered outside the Blue Tower, not for justice, but for a glimpse of the woman who had dared to touch the hem of the princess's gown with a curse. The sensationalism of her trial reached its peak when Anna began to name names. She didn't just point to other peasants. She aimed higher. She claimed that the wife of the mayor of Helsinge and several other noblewomen were part of the coven. This was the masterstroke of terror. If the devil's mother could be hiding in the mayor's house, then no one was safe. The social fabric of Denmark began to fray. Trust vanished. Every empty barrel in a cellar was viewed with suspicion, and every sudden gust of wind was treated as a personal attack. The execution of Anna Koldings was designed to be a spectacle of state power. In 1590, She was led to the stakes at Kronborg, the massive castle that guarded the entrance to the Baltic Sea. The setting was deliberate. Kronborg was the symbol of Danish naval might, the very thing she had allegedly tried to destroy. As the flames rose, the Devil's Mother did not beg for mercy. She remained a figure of mystery until the very end, her silence in the face of the fire only adding to a legend. But the death of Anna Koldings was not the end of the story. It was the spark that lit a fire across the sea. King James VI of Scotland, obsessed with the safety of his bride and his own divine right to rule, followed the Danish trials with a morbid intensity. He became convinced that he was the devil's primary target on earth. When he returned to Scotland, he initiated the North Berwick witch trials, using the Danish model of political scapegoating and sensational ritualism. Anna Koldings' confession about the beer barrels and the little devils became the blueprint for James's own book, Demonology. She provided the factual basis for a century of persecution. The bad she brought to society was a legacy of systemic, legalized paranoia that led to the deaths of thousands. She was the catalyst for a shift in Western thought, where witchcraft moved from a village superstition to a high-stakes crime of treason against the crown. The mystery of Anna Koldings remains. Was she a woman who truly believed she had found a way to strike back at the elite who looked down on her? Or was she a clever woman who realized that in a world of men like Valkendorf and Monk, her only chance at historical immortality was to become the monster they needed? Regardless, her name still echoes through the halls of Kronborg and the Blue Tower, a reminder of the night in a weaver's house when a few empty barrels and a whispered chant almost toppled two kingdoms.